that he's God is maker, creator, but he's also savior and friend. He's Father, Spirit, and Son. And he didn't think about just staying as this great God apart from us, but he sends his own Son, his very self, to live, to die, to bring us closer to him. When I survey the wondrous cross. Sing with us if you know it. When I survey the wondrous cross. Well, good morning. Isn't that it's beautiful? Just that hymn talking about the love of God compels us to give all that we are to Him. My name's Edwin. I want to take a moment to welcome each of you to the Crossings. If it's your first time here with us, in your seat back pocket in front of you, there is a connection card, and we would love for you to complete that connection card because this is your opportunity to let us know if there's a way we can come alongside you and serve you, be of any help, any blessing to you. We also want to give you a special gift today. It is deliciousness from the break room. It's our bread. It's natural. It tastes really good in the break room. And so what you'll do if you're first-time guest is take your connection card afterwards, walk into the break room, and there'll be somebody smiling and ready to give you your gift. Now, if you're a regular attender, you've been here several times before, you can also fill out the connection card if you've got some new information that you'd like to update, and you can buy the bread, but the gift of the bread for free is for our first-time guests. Cool? Okay. Oh, and before I forget, we at the Crossings love kids. We have all kinds of programs for kids. We've got obviously Crossings Kids, MOPS, MMO, but we also have Story Time, and this is a great monthly series which has been changed to the first Friday of every month at 10 a.m. It used to be Mondays, now it's Friday, and we're going to have a great reader as we have had in the past few months. Miss Debbie Famey is coming to us from Osceola County. She's actually my former boss. She used to be the head of visual and performing arts in Osceola County, but before that she was a elementary music teacher, and she's phenomenal. It's actually an honor to have such a great educator and individual coming to read to our children. So make sure that you invite neighbors and friends, or you come yourself to Story Time on Friday, September 6th. Okay, let's take a moment to say hello to one another.
Hey, Crossings Church. I want to tell you a little story. A few years ago, Pastor Kevin was on his way to church in Kenya, and he received a phone call that changed his life because his church was under attack. Radical Islamists had attacked, they killed 6, they wounded 12, traumatized everybody. Now here's a question for you. Where do you think Pastor Kevin is today? Well, Pastor Kevin is at that same church. He's still ministering there. And the persecuted church, they're just an amazing group. And here's why, I think, because you see the highest level of devotion at the highest cost. Well, there's a conference coming to your town, and we call it Awaken. And what we do, it kind of gives you a secret peek inside this world. We're going to introduce you to persecuted believers around the world, let you hear from them. These guys are going to challenge you, they're going to inspire you, and they may even transform your faith. Again, we call it Awaken, and I invite you to come and hear the whisper of the persecuted church.
So, I'm telling you, you don't want to miss this event on September 21st. I'm actually spending quite a bit of time working and connecting with pastors and community. So is Ron. And it's going to be powerful. We're actually calling it Hear the Whisper, Awaken, Hear the Whisper. And we'll have an opportunity to hear life-changing stories from persecuted believers who have paid the ultimate price. And so the whole point is to inspire us here in Florida and the United States to, as we go about our daily lives, to make sure that we just shine for our Savior. So that's Saturday, September 21st, 1 to 5 p.m. Put it on your calendar. Be here. Invite a bunch of friends. Just so you know, it's not a Crossings event. It's actually International Christian Concern. We're hosting them, but they're running the event, and there's going to be other churches that will be here as well, that their pastors and their leadership are communicating how important this event is. So I think it's going to be life-changing for us and for Central Florida. Cool. So make sure you're there. We good? I see the work of your hands, galaxies spinning a heavenly oh God, and all that you are is so overwhelming. And I hear the sound of your voice. All at once it's a gentle and thundering noise, oh God, and all that you are is so overwhelming. I delight myself in you, illuminated by your mercy. I'm overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed by you. God, I run into your arms, captivated by your mercy. I'll get this right. I'm overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed by you. Here at the Crossings, part of our worship time is that we give of our resources. We give our lives away, but we give of our finances. And so this is going to be a time where greeters are going to come around and collect our tithes and offerings. The one requirement, you're not required necessarily to give, but you're required to be cheerful as you give. And I think that's a great response with our God who has overwhelmed us with his love. I know the power of the cross, forgiven and free, forever you'll be my God, and all that you've done is so overwhelming. I delight myself in you, in the glory of your presence. I'm overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed by you. God, I run into your arms, unashamed because of mercy. I'm overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed by you. You are beautiful, you are beautiful, oh God, there is no one more beautiful. You are beautiful, oh you are the most beautiful. You are wonderful, you are wonderful, oh God, there is no one more wonderful. You are wonderful, oh you are the most wonderful. Feel free to stand with us and sing. You are glorious. You are glorious, you are glorious, oh God, there is no one more glorious. You are glorious, oh you are the most glorious. I delight myself in you, in the glory of your presence. I'm overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed by you. God, I run into your arms, unashamed because of mercy. I'm overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed by you. I'm overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed by you. Oh, you are the most glorious. Oh, it's who you are. You are the most wonderful. Whoa, whoa.
I love that line, being overwhelmed. I don't know what overwhelms you. but just to be overwhelmed by the reality of a loving God is just absolutely, absolutely incredible and unbelievable. Hey, what I want to do here before I start, well, actually, as I start, and you can sit down. All right, you can sit down. We'll let you guys sit down. We're going to be standing up in just a minute and then sit down again. You're going to think you're maybe some of the churches of your past because you're going to maybe get a workout or something, okay? Anyway, what I wanted to mention to you was, we can actually stop the music. There it was coming from. I love that. Thank you, Richard. Come on, let's thank Richard. I'm always telling him that things always sound better with music, but I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe, Anyway, all right. Thank you, my friend. A couple of months ago, actually it was in late June, just about 8 weeks ago today. And by the way, what I'm about to say, if you're new to the crossings, you can kind of chill. You can doodle on the back of your bulletin or something while I'm talking about this, because this is for people that have been a part of the crossings for a while. What we did a couple months ago is we kind of gave you kind of an idea of some things, or at least telling you that we are looking at where the church is right now. We know there needs to be some changes in some areas in order to get us into the future that we designed to get into this building for. And we mentioned when we did this in June that when we got into this facility several years ago, we didn't ever want to do that just to maintain so we could keep on doing what we were doing. That's boring, especially for me. So you don't want to just keep on doing what you're doing. We did it because of the what could be factor. And we lived in the what could be factor because with more space and a better location, we dreamed of so many things that we would be able to do. And some of those things have actually happened. And you just got to love the break room. And by the way, you need to love it some more. You need to show up some more. I mean, it's just great stuff. And if you say the coffee's too sweet, if you get one of these great espresso drinks, you say it's so sweet, well, then do what I do. Get a caramel macchiato light. Just tell them light, and they'll know what that means. It means half of what, if it's normally 3 pumps of something, they'll give you 1.5. So we got it? Mike, but I got a Palmer Light the other day. I said, give me a Palmer Light. I did, yeah, so Palmer Light. Yeah, and so I was just going to call it a Palmer, but, that's the inside joke between some of us, all right. Anyway, I digress here. Regress, I got to get back on track. Anyway, a lot of that stuff has happened. I love the stuff that's going on in the break room. And by the way, if you want to learn how to, from really professional baristas, how to work as a barista, we are going to be taking some volunteers because we need more people. By the way, if you want to do it as employment throughout the week, just come up and let me know. Hey, I think I'd like to give my hand at that. Or if you want to volunteer on Sunday and learn how to do that, that would be great. We'd love to, pull you in and give you some training on that. You can't just walk in and do it. It takes a lot of training. Heat, temperature, time, grams, you got to know what you're doing there. That's why they don't let me back there. Then we've had the My Morning Out program, which has just been absolutely wonderful. We've been loving that kind of stuff. But there's other things that are just not happening. And they're creating some gaps that leave me wanting, that leave some of you wanting. And we're very, very aware of these things. And we're working to make some changes on that. And one of the gaps, I'm just going to mention it here and move on. One of the gaps has been financial because being in our own facility with all the expenses and everything, it's taken away some of the funds that we need to be able to hire additional staff, which is absolutely critical for some of the things that we've wanted to be able to do. And you may have noticed that currently we have not started Adrenaline right now, our student ministry. That's because we really don't have the funds at this time to be able to bring on somebody on staff to be able to run our student ministry. So hopefully that will change in a relatively short period of time. But right now, that's why there is no Adrenaline student ministry. But we're pursuing lots of other things too. We really are, as we look into the future. We have a number of balls that are up in the air right now, and the board and I are leaning into these things a lot right now. We're even talking to some churches in the area about what they're dreaming about. This is one of the reasons we're doing the Awaken Conference. We're doing that with other churches. We're trying to see if there's some churches that really have a common vision we can kind of lean into, and we can be better together in some of the things that we're doing. And I know some of you are thinking, because I know so many of you, tell us what's happening, tell us what's happening, tell us who you're talking to, tell us. No. Here's the reason we just can't do it. Things are way too premature and things are way too fluid. And when some of them drop, then you go, man. Just say it. Man. And I've heard that way too many times. So we're just going to wait until we can kind of give you a little bit more of what's been going on that we've been working on. But we're hoping things are going to be a lot more concrete within about a month. So what we want to encourage you all to do, if you really want to know what's going on, you're going to need to come to regroup. Come to regroup. Friday night, 6:30 to 8:30. We're going to have some very yummy, tasty stuff. We will have childcare for that. We're going to have a wonderful time, and we're going to talk about some of the things that we've been dreaming, some of the things we're building, some of the things may not be all together yet. Give you the opportunity to interact and to ask questions, because we know very well that we're all in this together. So we want you to know that we are every bit as much as the day we started into the what could be mode. And I want to ask you all to be praying, those of you that are part of the crossings, you be praying about this what could be mode. You're going to go, but I don't know what it is, but I think God knows. So he'll get the code. He'll know exactly what you're praying about, all right? And let's do this together. Let's come together on the 27th, and we'd be love to tell you the things that we're thinking through, and things that have started, things that have stopped, things that are halfway there, things that may be all the whole way there by the time we get together on the 27th. So are you with me? Are we good? We're good. You know, I'm good. Pray with me. God, stand and pray with me now. Stand up again. God, thank you so much that we can be together in this room, and thank you that the church was never our idea. Isn't some organization, some people got together and threw some dollars on the table and said, let's build an organization. Jesus, you built the church. You call it your body. You call it your presence on this planet. And thank you, God, that you said the gates of hell will never prevail against it. And you never said it wouldn't try. You never said it wouldn't fight. You never didn't say it wouldn't throw bombs and try to attack in every area, but you said it would not prevail. And so, God, we're holding to that, and we just thank you for the opportunities that you're opening up to us and the things that we're looking at, and we look forward to what's going to happen. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you can sit down. Hey, for starters here, as I get going this morning, there is something else I have to do. Because after last Sunday, many of you were with us last Sunday, I had at least a dozen people ask me the same question, which I hated, because my goal when I teach is always to be clear. But they kept asking me the same question again and again. All right, so I want to answer that before we get going. Last week, I showed a picture of my Woodstock era band, okay? It was on the road in the summer of 1969, touring California and Oregon on a concert tour during when Woodstock was actually going on. And I just figured that even though it was 50 years ago, 1969, I know I looked just the same. So I didn't see how anybody would have any problem picking out which one was me. And everybody kept saying, which one was you in the picture? Which one was you in the picture? So let me help you here just a minute so you never have to ask me this again. If you were thinking it was this guy right here, you are absolutely wrong. That wasn't me. But, however, if you were thinking it was this guy right here up on the top, again, you were absolutely wrong. Okay? Because it's this guy right here. Yes. Let's get a better picture of that guy. Oh, this guy was cool. Oh, yeah. Made his mother proud, let me tell you. So now we all good on that? Say we're good. We're good. Yes, so now you know. All right. Good. All right. This morning we are starting a brand new series, and there's a good chance this could become my very most favorite series. And as I get going on it, you'll really understand the effects of this have really changed my life. You can take that one down now. We don't need to see him. Yeah. All right. We're starting this new series. It's called Jesus Says. Jesus Says. See, like some of you, not all of you, but like some of you, I grew up in church. And let me tell you something. If you have never realized this and you grew up in church, you need to realize this. People like us tend to think about church and the Bible and God and Jesus very different from people that did not grow up in church. Our environment really kind of shaped our understanding of the Bible, of God, of Jesus, of all that stuff. And so we kind of have code words and insider ways of thinking that those outside just don't get. They don't hardly even know what we're talking about. Like the church I grew up in, we definitely had a particular kind of music. And the reason we did that, because we knew it was the kind of music Jesus liked. He did not like drums. He did not like guitars. Jesus was totally into pianos and organs. So, that's definitely why we had that kind of music in the church that I grew up. And we absolutely had a dress code, and you got to know why. It's because it's the kind of clothes that Jesus liked. It was the Jesus brand clothes. And he certainly had said, this is the kind of clothes that you ought to wear. And the only acceptable entertainment in our church was the entertainment that Jesus had obviously given 2 thumbs up to, because he was into that kind of music. And we kind of looked down on that kind of entertainment. And there are only certain kinds of people that we were allowed to be around or to hang with, because, of course, Jesus had said there were only certain kind of people that you should hang with. And there was the good people and the bad people, and there was the weird people, and there was the drinking people, and there was the tattooed people. And so these were all groups of people we were never to hang around, because Jesus said. And we just hung around with all the good people like us. They were usually just like us, and we just loved that. So that's the kind of people we hung around. And there were lots of things that were like this, that we were sure that this is what Jesus had said. And these things made up this list that I grew up with, and some of you grew up with, and do's and don'ts that we were expected to follow because Jesus said. But you know what happened to me? The better I got at this Jesus says game, and I got pretty good at it, the more critical and judgmental I got toward all those people who didn't play the game nearly as well as I did. But at the same time, there was something else going on. I was actually secretly, internally jealous of some of them, because they seemed to be having a lot more fun and enjoying life a whole lot more than I did, even though they were doing and wearing and listening to some of the things that I was told Jesus said you shouldn't do. And some of you may have grown up and been just that way, and that may be why you dropped out of church. That may be why you stopped going for a period of time. Somewhere along the line, you just figured that the Jesus Says game, with all its do's and don'ts, was just a drag. And you were never going to be very good at that anyway. No matter how hard you tried, you could never really play the game very well. And so you just kind of gave up. And you said, what's the use? But I want to tell you this morning what is the absolute great, great news. If you could somehow erase from your memory bank everything you'd ever heard about God and Jesus and the Bible, and if you were to start with a blank slate and pick up the 4 accounts of Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're the first 4 books of the New Testament, you would discover some absolutely amazing things. In fact, I encourage you during this series to read those. You say, which one should I read? Read them all. I read someplace in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John just about every day of my life. It has nothing to do with being a pastor. I want to get a better grip on really who this is that I'm following. And this actually started for me back when I was around 22, after I'd been asked to leave the church because I was doing some of the Jesus Says, I was not doing some of the Jesus Says things. Like I had the audacity to major in theater at California State University, and Jesus says, don't major in theater. Those are bad people. And so I wore some really cool clothes, okay? And I was told, Jesus says you don't wear those kind of clothes. And the leaders of my church actually came to my house and basically said that. And they gave me the option, they wanted me to change my appearance and change some of the things that I was doing. And I chose not to. So I moved down to Los Angeles. And I moved down there to work with work in training and developing a traveling theater troupe in that area. And during that time, what I decided to do was to actually read the Bible all for myself. No tapes, no commentaries, no videos. There weren't even any podcasts then. So I was actually, can you believe this? I was actually going to read it for myself. Whew. I was telling somebody about that the other day, and they said, you're kidding. I said, no, really, I actually did this. And as I've said many times, I was amazed by 2 things. Absolutely amazed by 2 things. First of all the things the Bible did not say that I had been told it said. And I pretty much caught on that the reason I was told this is what it said, because it was a lot easier to control my behavior. And quite honestly, it was probably kind of helpful. Probably kept me out of a lot of stuff. But I was amazed at all the things that I couldn't find in the Bible that I was told that it had said. And then I was absolutely amazed at what it did say. I was just amazed And it changed my life. I began to see and to understand for the first time who Jesus really is. Because I'm convinced if anybody, you or anybody else that you work with or that you know is in your neighborhood, if anybody could actually see who Jesus really is and understand what he really said, they'd find him irresistible. Just irresistible. They wouldn't be able to stop. But because we've mixed all this up, it's gotten very, very confusing. And people go, I don't think I like that. And I say, quite honestly, I don't think I would either. Fortunately, that's not what Jesus is like. But if he was like that, count me out. The very first thing you discover about Jesus as you begin to read through the 4 Gospels is that he is extremely relational. Please get this. He's extremely relational. He is relational on steroids. He was all about relationships. When Jesus talked about religion, when Jesus talked about spiritual things, he didn't do it from the context of do's and don'ts. He did it from the context of relationship, like the relationship between a father and a son. How relational is that? Then he would talk about a vine and branches. He'd say, I'm the vine, you are the branches. The vine doesn't say to the branches, here's all the things you have to do and not do. It just says, lean into me. Just stay connected to me. Lean in. That's all it says. Then he'd talk about sheep and a shepherd. Now, this kind of gets lost on us for sure because we don't understand all that. But in Jesus' culture, they understood it. It was huge because they understood that shepherds actually cared for sheep. It was a very, very relational thing. So one day Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. I care for my sheep. They stay right with me. They know my voice. And when they hear my voice, they move, not because I make them move, because they hear my voice and they go, oh, yeah, it means food. Oh, it means water. Oh, it means protection. Oh, it means all this stuff. They said they moved with his voice. Not with his rod, with his voice. I don't force them. They just trust me. So can I just say this morning as we get into this series, if your approach to Christianity is anything less than that, then maybe you've missed something along the way. Because Jesus didn't invite anyone into doctrines. He didn't invite anyone into lists of do's and don'ts and rules. But he invited them into this incredible relationship with the living God. You think, wow, that is kind of refreshing. Kind of how does that work? And kind of how does it start? So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to start where Jesus very frequently started when he talked to people with 2 very, very simple words. He started with these words, follow me. He didn't start with obey me. He didn't start with read this, check this box. He said, follow me. Jesus extended this invitation to every single kind of person imaginable. He extended it to rich people. He extended it to poor people. He extended it to religious people. He extended it to irreligious people, to winners, to losers, to lawbreakers, to moral misfits. And I want to look at just one of these this morning. It's repeated several times throughout the scriptures. You may be familiar with this one, but if you're new to the Bible, you're going to find this story just great. And if you've heard it before, I hope it just takes you to another level. It's found in the first of the 4 Gospels. It's found in the book of Matthew. And the book of Matthew is written by Matthew. And what we're going to look at is a story written by Matthew about Matthew, and he's Matthew. So basically, he's kind of writing in the third person here. So just kind of keep this in mind. When he's talking about Matthew, he's really talking about himself. So really, he's telling the story about himself. It's found in Matthew chapter 9. Let's look at Matthew chapter 9, the first part of verse 9. And it says here, as Jesus went on from there, he'd been in a different location, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's office. This is the first thing we find out about Matthew. He's a tax collector. And again, that doesn't mean a whole lot to us. We get our taxes taken out of our checks, We don't really usually think about the tax collector. But it's way different in that day. In fact, the only category of person that I can think of to help us kind of get the right emotion wrapped up in this would be like maybe a 22-year-old kid who hangs out behind the gas station selling drugs to kids that think they're buying candy. Kind of get a feel for that? You like that guy? Disgusting. A very, very, very disgusting person. These tax collectors worked for Rome. What Rome would do, they would auction off the right to collect taxes in their different provinces, and it was a very, very, very enticing, because if they won the bid to collect those taxes in that region, they could collect as much tax as they wanted. There's nothing in writing. As much tax as they wanted, as long as Rome got their share, they could keep everything that was less, and it was fine. But let me tell you, there were plenty of taxes. When I was reading this, I was thinking I was in America or something. All right, there was a poll tax. There was a bridge tax, an income tax, a harbor tax, a crossroads tax, a wine tax, a property tax. It went on, and it was an extremely lucrative business. But these guys were hated by the Jews. They were hated. They were outcasts. They were traitors because they were supporting and they were benefiting Rome, who had their thumb very heavily on Israel. These people were not allowed to even go in the temple. So all the stuff you read about, all this temple worship and all the Jewish, tradition, they weren't allowed to be a part of it. They weren't accepted in their society. And Matthew was one of these. All right, he wasn't your basic, nice little church-going religious guy. So Jesus walks up to where Matthew is collecting his taxes. And, I think about this because I have to deal with this myself. He could have said a lot of things to see a traitor guy, doing some despicable things to his own community. He could have said, boy, I bet your mom's proud of you, isn't she? Yeah? Now, how's the trader business going today, Matthew? You doing good, making some money? Just to be a little sarcastic, I think you could probably come up with some of your own. And it would have been very understandable if he'd done this, because after all, Jesus was a rabbi, and it was expected that anybody who's a rabbi would toe the party line of this stuff is very despicable to do to your own people. But that isn't what he says. Let's look at the verse again, verse 9. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, is what he said. Follow me. And I can imagine there must have almost been an audible gasp from the crowd. He didn't say, follow him, did he? Certainly wouldn't do that. And Peter's probably thinking, hold on, man. If he follows, that's going to mean he's going to be one of us, and I don't like this guy. He's definitely not our kind of people. I don't like him. Some others were thinking, now, hold on. It just can't be that simple that a guy like a tax collector can be part of the Jesus group with all the stuff he's got, with all the baggages he's got. Because, see, Jesus was a rabbi. And the invitation from a rabbi to follow wasn't like, hey, let's go for a walk down the street, grab a cup of coffee. Follow me was a formal invitation to become part of the insider group of a rabbi, to be a disciple, to be a learner of that rabbi. They were very careful who they would say that to. And Jesus is saying, come on, Matthew, identify yourself with me, and I'm going to identify myself with you. We're going to be in the same group. Now, here's what Jesus did not say that people like me who grew up playing the Jesus Says game would have expected him to say. This is probably would have happened if he'd walked into my church, if Matthew had dared walk into my church. Hey, Matthew, if you'll just stop doing this and you'll start doing that, then I'll consider you being a follower. In fact, here's a little assignment for you. I want you to go through this, and I want to check the right boxes. And if you check all the right boxes and agree to doing this, then you can come and you can follow me. See, there's a lot of things that Jesus could have asked Matthew to do that would have made him go, are you kidding? Remember where this guy's coming from. This guy's a traitor. This guy's greedy. This guy wants money. This guy doesn't seem to bother him cheating. He's not even, he can't even go to the temple. He can't be part of the society. He doesn't get invited to the birthday parties. This is the kind of guy he is. And if Jesus had said that, he'd say, are you kidding, man? I can't do that. That'd be way too hard. It would cost me way too much. I'm not there yet. Look at Matthew 9 again. As Jesus went from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he said, and Matthew got up and he followed him. Can I tell you why this is such an important thing to understand? This is the same invitation that Jesus extended to all kinds of people. It was a very simple invitation. It was very simple. And the invitation is just exactly the same today. The question is not, how much of the Bible do you know? How much of the Bible do you understand? In fact, how much of the Bible do you even believe? It isn't, you go to church a lot? What's your attendance record? Do you keep all the 10 Commandments? Do you do all the whatever religious routines that you were brought up to do? Those were never the questions. Those aren't the questions for you and me, but the questions are simply, am I following Jesus? Am I following Jesus? Now, if that seems way too simple, it seemed way too simple to the religious people around Jesus as well. In fact, Jesus continues the stories. And he continues talking about this, or Matthew continues to talk about this. He gives us this very interesting detail. It's in verse 10. He says, well, Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house. From 9, we were at the tax collector's booth. In 10, we're at his house. Now, I can just imagine Jesus' guys going, man, it's bad enough that he would even talk to this guy at the tax booth. But now we're going to his house too? There's just no way. It probably has tax collector cooties. Who wants to get even close to this kind of environment? Let's stay as far away as we possibly can. But Jesus says this, I'm going to that house. And if you're following me, guess what? You're going to the house too. And they did. They went with him to the house. Look at the rest of the verse, the next verse. Is that, do I have another one up there or not that I forget? Well, let's leave it there, okay? So they did. So they went there to the tax collectors thing. And let me tell you something. The tax collectors were so bad. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought, come on, my head. I'm just reading this in my head. Well, Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house. Listen who was there. Many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. This was not the who's who of town. Okay? Tax collectors were so bad, the only friends they were really able to have were other tax collectors. Okay? Those are the guys they had. This is a very irreligious crowd, a crowd that was excluded from the temple. They figured they were going to hell anyway, so why not just eat, drink, and be merry because it may be all over tomorrow. That's the kind of crowd they were. And the reason this is so big to me, and I remember this years ago as I was reading the gospel, is because the Jesus Says game in my church said that these are the very kinds of people we were never to be around. I was taught this. Some of you were taught this. Some of you have struggled with it for years. These are the very kinds of people I was taught to never be around. And then when I read this, I go, Jesus, my leader, Jesus, the one who I say I'm following, is there, and I refuse to follow him into that environment or be around those kinds of people? So if you're relatively new to Christianity, you have a bad taste in your mouth because maybe you or your family, kind of got hacked by the church for something that was going on in your life, here's something you got to know. Please know this right here. Jesus is super comfortable with people who aren't anything like him. Do you know the number one reason people don't go to church? Statistically, they're not good enough. They're not good enough. Can't be around all those good people, if they only knew, right? Can't be around all those good people. But Jesus is super comfortable with people who aren't anything like him. And as you read through the Gospels, you find that the people he would hang around, they began to feel comfortable around Jesus too. Jesus was not put off by people's wrongdoings. People was not put off by their morality. He was not put off by their habits, even though he knew their thoughts. even though he knew what they did last month or last week or last night. So he looks at Matthew and he just says, hey, Matthew, follow me. You know I want you to follow me? Boy, please get this. You know I want you to follow me? Because I really want you to be around me. I just really want you to be around me. But I don't care. I just really want you to be around me. Then comes verse 11. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? We're confused. We're really confused. He's a rabbi. He's a holy man. And we're religious people. We like to keep the rules. He teaches rules. We follow all the church dogmas. So why is he choosing to hang with people that are nothing like him over people like us who are the good guys? We're confused. Now, Jesus, I just kind of imagine he's probably sitting at some table with all this, hoopla going on. He's sitting there with Matthew and his friends, and they're kind of feeling a little awkward trying to figure out what Jesus is doing at their party because most rabbis would never even come close to their party. And Jesus knows that these Pharisees, the Pharisees, by the way, is this very strict, keep the rules, religious sect of Judaism. And he knows that these Pharisees are really confused. And so he says, and I just kind of imagine, he says this loud enough so they can hear it. They're kind of sitting outside the door, He said, this is what he says so they can hear it in verse 12. On hearing this, Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Now, I don't know exactly how this must have gone down. But, I have an imagination, and I'm not saying this is what it says, but I just imagine this is going on. I just imagine Matthew's going on, hold on, man, wait a minute. You're a guest in my house, and you're saying we're sick? You're eating my food, and you're saying that we're sick? And I can just see Jesus kind of smiling. And he says to Matthew, Matthew, come on, bro. You're a tax collector. Of course you're sick. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. Look at your friends, man. You guys are sick. You know there's something wrong, or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. You know you color outside the lines all the time. You probably even cheat on each other if you could, right? And you know that if there is a God, you've certainly broken his rules. I don't need to tell you that. And you know there's probably, because you do all this rule breaking in your life, you probably know there's a distance between you and God, and you know that if there's any kind of judgment, you're not going to come out real good, and you don't need any preacher to tell you that. You just need to know it deep down in your innards, don't you, Matthew? And then I can hear Jesus saying again, probably for the benefit of those people on the outside, the rest of the verse here, he says, did I put the rest of the verse up there? He says, but go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous. I've come to call sinners to repentance. He says, I'm here for the sick. And I want you guys to know that. I'm here for the sick people because I love the sick people. And then Matthew, I can just hear Matthew saying, because he sticks with Jesus, he says, Jesus, what you're saying is actually kind of offensive. But quite honestly, I know it's true. I need your help. And Jesus makes it really clear, like with this verse, I came not to call the righteous, call sinners to repentance. He's saying this. And I need to get this in my life. And you need to get this in your life. He's saying, I'm not content simply to hang out with people who believe the right things and behave the right ways. Sure, I love them. Sure, I want to hang out with them. But I want those people that believe the right things and behave the right ways, I want them to join me in being with people who don't believe the right things and who don't behave the right ways, and who know in their innards there's something missing because we've got the answer to this. Because what Jesus is saying more than anything else on the planet, I want those people who don't believe the right things and who don't behave the right ways to be in relationship with me. That's what I want more than anything. When I hear somebody say, go to hell, I think, how could anybody possibly say that to anybody? Do you know what they're saying? Jesus is saying, I don't want one of them to go to hell. I don't care what they're doing or how bad they did or what they did last week or last month or last year. And I need my people to follow me in doing this. Follow me. Can I just say something again? If you're a follower of Jesus this morning, and not all of you are, some of you are just investigating, thank you for being here. But especially for those of us that are part of the Crossings, we don't ever want to become a church that's content to gather together and believe the right things and behave the right ways, and it stops right there. Isn't it cool? We're all together. We believe the same things. Oh, it's really cool, behave the right ways. Because if we do, you know what's going to happen? We're going to find ourselves standing outside the very room that Jesus inhabits. I hear people sometimes talk about the church like I'm going to go into the house of God. God doesn't have a house. He was in Matthew's house. That was a house of God. The house of God is wherever God's present. The house of God is wherever His love wants wanting to be extended. We need to change our concept of what the house of God looks like. It's the house where God is. Any church or any community group that is content to simply believe the right things and behave the right ways will eventually become a Pharisee with an air of judgment that says, as soon as you change, as soon as you straighten up your act, you can join us. Because here's the message of the Pharisees. Change, and then you can join us. That's what I grew up with. That's what some of you grew up with. Change, and then you can join us. But here's Jesus. Join us, and then you'll change. Join us, and then then you'll change. And he says, Matthew, I'm not asking you at this point to do anything but to stand up in your little tax booth and walk out of it and follow me. And guess where we're going, Matthew? We're going over to your house. And the Pharisees are like, but he's a tax collector. He doesn't believe the right stuff. He doesn't behave the right way. But Jesus is saying, I don't really care right now. I really don't. Matthew, I want to invite you to take just a little itty-bitty baby step and follow me because I want to be with you. I want to be with you. But let me warn you, Matthew, if you follow me for very long, one of these days you're going to look in the mirror. You may not recognize who you see. Not because you're keeping all the do's and don'ts and all the rules, but because you've been with me, because I'm like a father, and because I'm like a vine, because I'm like a good shepherd. And as we've been doing life together, changes have been happening, and you haven't even noticed it. But we've been doing life together. We've been walking together. We've been chatting together. We've been having meals together, and changes are happening. So let me wrap this up this morning, because I want to pull everything together into just 3 short thoughts, if I could, that if you miss everything else that I said here, please get these 3 thoughts. Here's the first one. Being a sinner does not disqualify you from following Jesus. Do you know that? Being a sinner does not disqualify you from following Jesus. In fact, it's a prerequisite. It's a prerequisite. This is so important because every single person who has ever said yes to following Jesus was a sinner, colored way outside the lines. Way outside the lines. And the only people that in the scriptures that resisted Jesus were the people that thought they already had it together and they were already perfect. So those are the ones who were disqualified. The ones that thought that they didn't have any needs, thought that they had it all together. The less perfect a person is, the greater their candidacy for becoming a follower of Jesus. Is that wonderful or what? So he goes to Matthew, who's really at the far end of the spectrum, and he invites him to take a baby step. And he's saying, man, there's no habit, there's no addiction, there's no lifestyle, there's no problem that puts anyone outside the circle of those people that Jesus invites to follow him. And he does not say, clean up your act first. He says, I'll take you just exactly like you are. Here's the second one. Not believing everything does not disqualify you from following Jesus. Now you're going to have to track with me on this one for a minute, because I know it sounds a little odd at first. You know, there are lots of things that Jesus' earliest followers didn't believe. You got to know this. They were a ragtag group of people. I love reading through the scriptures, and like one time when after his followers had been with him for probably between a year and 2 years, they were out on a boat together, and there was this humongous storm, and they thought they were going to die, and Jesus was sleeping, and they wake up Jesus, and they say, don't you care that we're perishing? And it says that Jesus got up, and he said to the wind, and he said to the waves, shh, calm down, stop, and it stopped. And you know what the next verse says? His followers looked at each other and says, who is this? Who? Even the winds and the waves obey. You didn't know? Come on, guys, of course, don't you understand? They were so surprised. A year after following him, they didn't get it. In fact, Jesus was constantly, as you read through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, what's he constantly getting on their case for? What's with your unbelief? Why don't you guys believe? Where's your faith? How come you don't believe? They didn't believe a ton of stuff. In fact, Thomas, one of the guys, remember when Jesus rose from the dead? That very night he got together and he showed up, and most of the guys were there, all except for Thomas, most of his followers, and Thomas wasn't there. And they came to Thomas and they said, Thomas, we've seen Jesus. He said, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. But Jesus did not say to him, Thomas, wow, because you don't believe that, you're out of the club. You just failed. Go away. After all you've seen, You know something? I meet people all the time, and they say this, and this used to really, 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 really bother me. Really bother me. I don't believe that Jesus created the world. I don't believe he turned water into wine. I don't believe that flood story about Noah and the ark. I don't believe that David and Goliath stuff, that's in the Bible. In fact, there's a lot of things in the Bible I'm not sure that I even believe. Now, catch me very closely here, and don't hear what I'm not saying. Jesus invites someone to follow him even if they have doubts, even if there are things they don't believe, include believing the Bible. I remember my early years, I used to go around and I worked so hard at trying to make people believe the Bible, believe the Bible, believe the Bible. After a while, I go, what am I doing? It's like Matthew in the tax booth. The guy grew up not believing the Bible and thinking all this and I'm telling he's got to go through this whole mental gymnastic and change all his understanding of all the way he was raised before he can come to Jesus. God, that's nuts. So now when somebody says, I don't believe the Bible, I say, that's okay. Some of you are not ever coming back again, right? Because I said that. Listen, that was never a prerequisite for Jesus. He just said, follow me. Jesus says, a little by little, that will come. So let me just tell you something right now. If you are not a follower of Jesus and you don't believe the Bible, okay, I'm so glad you're here. You're in the great place. But I want to dare you to do something. It's what changed my life. It's a dangerous book. Pick up the Bible that you don't believe. I'm good with that. Pick up the Bible you don't believe. And there's 4 books in the beginning of the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Read any of them you want. Some people say start in Luke, start in John. I don't care where you start. Just read any of them. Read all of them. I just dare you to do that and see what happens. And the reason I even challenge you to do this is because of the third one that I want to make sure is absolutely crystal clear here, and that's this. Jesus' invitation to follow is an invitation to relationship. He just wants to be close to you. That's it. He's not mad at you. He just wants to be close to you because you matter to him and he loves you. It's not an invitation to jump through a hoop or to do this or to do that. You know something? If you're married and you have a spouse who obeys all the marriage rules and you obey all the marriage rules, that will not guarantee a good relationship. That won't guarantee a good relationship. Keeping rules isn't what gives anybody a good relationship. In fact, the reason that we as married people want to obey the rules is because we love the person we're with. It changes our whole perspective on that. Here's what Jesus knows, all right? Full disclosure. I'm going to give you his inside thought here. If you start following him, even if you don't believe things, even if you have doubts, you're going to begin to see things, and you're going to begin to hear things, you're going to begin to feel things that will cause you to shift in your thinking, will cause you to think differently. You know, some years after Jesus was gone, about 25 years after Jesus was gone, a guy by the name of Paul, became known as the Apostle Paul, who started a lot of churches throughout the world after Jesus was gone. He said it absolutely perfect in a letter that he wrote to the very young church that was in Rome. He said this, he said, "It's not fear, but it's God's kindness that leads us to change." I'm going to scare somebody and tell them how bad they are and tell them, no. This is Paul saying, hey, listen, you got to understand something. It's understanding the kindness of God. It's understanding the goodness of God. It's understanding the love of God. It's following him. It's experiencing those things that actually make you change. The rules don't make you change. They make you get into a box, but they don't make you change. So can I just say, God wants more than anything to have a relationship with us. That's it. That's it. That's what he wants. He wants to be close to you. He wants to be close to me. He wants skeptics to be close to him. He wants religious people and irreligious people. He wants winners. He wants losers. He wants moral saints and moral misfits, all to be close to him. He just wants to be in their company. He just wants to be in your company. And he wants his church, both in this building and outside in the community, to follow him in this. To follow him in this. Because you know what's going to happen to us the longer we're followers of Jesus? We're going to feel the pull to slip into the Jesus says game. Feeling good about ourselves because we believe the right things. We'll do study after study after study to make sure we believe the right things. And then we try to get it into our lives so we behave and do the right things. But we lose sight of the perspective of relationship. And when we do, we end up losing the peace that comes when you're next to Jesus. We lose the hope that comes from being next to Jesus and close to him. We lose the expectancy. We end up being fearful. I go, how in the world can you be fearful when you've got the God of creation standing right next to you? What in the world's with fear? Oh, but I believe the right things and I do the right things. No. Those are dead giveaways. Fear, lack of joy, lack of peace are dead giveaways. I'm not enjoying the relationship with the living God who is right here. I challenge you to do something. I do this frequently myself. I start every morning in our conference room over here, and I have a cup of coffee, good cup of coffee. And most of the time, I sit down there. It doesn't happen every morning, but probably 80% of the time. I sit down there, and a smile just goes across my face. I just say, good morning. Good morning, Father. Thanks for another day. This is good. Now, God, I got some issues going on here. And by the way, why didn't you do this? And what? But it's a relationship. Both the greatest part of my Christian life is not talking up here on a Sunday morning. The greatest part is not being a pastor. None of that. The greatest part is walking with the living God day in and day out who knows me regardless and loves me regardless. And like we talked the other week, sometimes he presses his finger down and says, it hurts a little bit, but why does he do that? Because he loves us. I want to encourage us so much in this. And because as we continue to move in this series, we're going to discover that everything Jesus says, the title of this is Jesus Says, is rooted not in checking boxes and not in fulfilling religious duties, but in a relationship. So he says this to help foster this relationship. He says that to foster the relationships. He says don't do that to foster the relationship. It's all about relationship. And if we're going to follow Jesus, church, you know what? We're going to be going into houses that look very different than this. And we're going to be around people that we were taught maybe in our early years never to be around. But that's where you would find Jesus. And Jesus says, if you're going to follow me, guys, you're following me over to Matthew's house. Oh, my daddy and mommy told me never to go in that house. I'm telling you, come with me. Because it becomes my house when I enter it, because I'm there. Are we good on this? Tell me we're good. We're good. So I want to encourage you. In this whole series, very first thing Jesus says is just follow me. Just hang with me. Hang with me with all your baggage. Hang with me with all your doubts. Hang with me with all your questions. Hang with me with all your perplexities. I'm good. I can take it. You can even yell at me sometime when we're walking down the street. I'm okay. I'm good with that. I just want to be with you. And you know what happens the more we're together? I'll kind of rub off on you a little bit. I'll rub off on you a little bit. And then you look in the mirror one day and you go, whoa, man, this is different. And other people look at your life and they say, wow, that's different. At the same time, I look at some people that know the Bible 10 times more than I do. They can do all kinds of things way better than I do. They say they're Christians, but I don't see any joy. I don't see any peace. And I want to go, are you following? Are you hanging tight? Are you close? So I can encourage you with this. This is the first thing Jesus says. Follow me. Stand and pray with me. God, thank you so much that you give us stuff in the Scripture. There's so much that's not there. Like John said when he wrote his gospel, if everything was written about what you said and did, the whole world couldn't contain it. So you were very selective in making sure we got certain things so we could get a picture of who you are. And God, some of us, myself included, grew up with you being the great rule keeper in the sky. You had all the boxes to check, and you'd be mad at me someday, and I'd be okay, and then I'd try to do some penance and behavior and make some promises and turn over a new leaf that never lasted, and then I always felt bad again and never enjoyed you. But God, that must have broken your heart. And some of us are in this room this morning just like that. And we just want to stand here this morning, God, and say, thank you that you don't put all kinds of criteria before we can follow you. You just want us to get in the game. You just want us to get up from the tax booth. You just want us to walk over with all our doubts and all our fears and all our bad habits and all our moral discrepancies that go on in our life and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, you want to help us fix those things, but they're not criteria before we can start walking with you. And it's as we walk with you that they get changed. Thank you so very, very much. You are so, so good. In Jesus' name, amen.
Stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are, it's who you are, it's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am, it's who I am, it's who I am. And I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who. Declaring you are. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deep, he's calling us as you call me. Deeper still into love, love, love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Let's raise the roof with this. You are perfect in all of your ways. Yes, he is. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect, so Adonai. You are perfect in all of your ways. All of them. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I. Can we do it one more time? You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. I can share that along with Ron, growing up, I struggled. Am I good enough for God? Can I make the cut? And the truth is, none of us can do it. There's not enough good works we can do. And I love that in our men's small group, we've been getting together the last couple months just to study the triune God, the Father, the Son, and Spirit. And one of the things that quickly was revealed to us is that God, everywhere he operates as Father, it comes out of love first. So his mercy, his judgment, everything that comes from him, it's done from a good Father's heart. And I think that changes the world for all of us when we know that we can trust in him because he is fundamentally good. He's love. Amen. So I hope that's freeing for some of us. We're still working through it in our group, but we're grateful for the good, good Father he is. Thank you so much for being here this morning. One of our prayers is that we leave differently. We come in one way and we're inspired, we're changed for the better. So I hope that today that's you and that's me. Have a great day, a great week, and please put September 21st on your schedule, an ICC event, 1 p.m. It's going to be amazing. Thank you.